Okay, so when you're dealing with the court system and you're dealing with the rights of the accused, there's an ongoing balance that needs to be struck. In the same way that the framers were very interested in the rights of the accused, the reality is that we also want to protect the rights of the accused, but we want to make sure that we convict guilty people, right? It's cool to protect the rights of the accused, that's cool, but if we set up the rules in such a way that guilty people go free, that's problematic. And so the courts are always trying to find that balance between protecting our liberties, making sure that we're protected from the government, and then also making sure that the government can do its job. Law enforcement can do their job and convict people who are guilty. In 1953, Earl Warren was appointed Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So I'm going to talk about the Warren Court. That's when the time on the court where Earl Warren was the Chief Justice from 1953 to 1969. And what happened during Earl Warren's time is the rights of the accused expanded. They were given more rights. And I want to give you a couple cases where this happened. Very famous case, Mapp versus Ohio, 1961. This is where the courts went ahead and they talked about for the first time something called the exclusionary rule. The exclusionary rule. They're using exclusionary like to exclude something. This is what happened in this case. The police were looking for some guy in this woman's house. And so they got a search warrant to look for this guy in this house. They went through the house, they searched all through the house, they couldn't find anything. But they kept searching. And as they searched more and more, they went down to the basement and they found that this woman had pornography in there that was illegal pornography. I don't remember what it was, but it was illegal pornography. And so they arrested her. And she challenged that. She said, wait, you didn't have a warrant to search my house. You had a warrant to look for this guy, and he wasn't here. And the courts ruled in her favor. They said the police can't use evidence gained during an unreasonable search and seizure. Since they didn't have a warrant for that stuff, they couldn't go ahead and just look for it. So police have to go ahead and obtain search warrants. They can't just look through your house. They can't say, I want to go look for this guy, and then rifle through your whole house. So in terms of, does that make sense? The exclusionary rule. They have to have a search warrant to look. Who does this benefit? Does this benefit the rights of the accused or the sort of convicting the guilty? Which side of the ledger does this help? Right, this is more, so put like sort of greater than for rights of the accused. That's sort of what I have in mind. Right, this is something that really benefits the rights of the accused. Because somebody could be guilty, somebody can have contraband, somebody can have something illegal. But if the courts, if the police don't have a warrant for it, they can't search for it. And if they find,
then they can't use that evidence because they didn't have a.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There've been a number of cases where this has happened, where they've said you can't introduce this in a court. You can't introduce this in a court of law. There was a case called Gideon versus Wainwright, where this guy was charged with I think it was a misdemeanor. This is in Florida, and he's charged with a misdemeanor and found guilty of the misdemeanor. But he goes ahead and he says, "Wait a minute, I have right to legal counsel." In Florida, what they had said was, if you're convicted of a misdemeanor, the state doesn't have to provide a lawyer. So he sued. He was actually a prisoner. There's a book called Gideon's Trumpet that became famous as a result of it. He went ahead and said, I have a right to a court-appointed attorney. And the Supreme Court said, yes, you're right. You have the right to legal counsel, even in the case of a misdemeanor. Who does this benefit? The rights of the accused, or sort of this idea of convicting the guilty? Yeah, this is really the rights of the accused once again. This guy did break the law, right? But because he didn't get a lawyer, they went ahead and they said, no, this guy has to have a lawyer. That way, if you're accused of a crime, but you can't afford a lawyer, now you get a public defender appointed to you as a result of this case. You guys have heard about your Miranda rights, right? This is Miranda versus Arizona. In this case, this is a case where guy gets into a police car. The police don't tell him that he doesn't have to talk, right? He starts going ahead and spilling his guts, telling them everything, confessing to everything. And later on, he sued, and he said, wait, I should have been informed that I didn't have to talk to the police.
And their reason was because he was Hispanic. They said that they figured that he didn't speak English.
Is that what it was? Yeah. Okay. The courts in that case ruled that you need to go ahead and you need to inform somebody of their rights when you arrest them. So that's where you have the right to remain silent, the right to consult an attorney. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. That's all from Miranda versus Arizona. Is that favoring the rights of the accused or convicting the guilty? Again, another example of rights of the accused, protecting the rights of the accused. This was somewhat of a pattern through the Warren Court, expanding the rights of the accused, going ahead and protecting them in certain areas that there were not previously protections. In 1969, what the hell did I just do? Excuse me while I get my lecture notes back up. One second. Okay, well, we can continue on because you guys have your notes there, right? So, in the next court case, this is under the Burger Court. It's the United States versus Leon. And in this case, what's going on is this is the first time that the courts talk about something called the Good Faith Amendment. There we go. Sorry. Not amendment, sorry. Exception. Where are we? The good faith exception. So let me tell you what happened in this case. I'm just going to give you sort of a fake example, but it's the same basic idea. The police are watching this house, and they know that there are being drugs sold there, right? So they go ahead and they survey the area, and they're watching the house, and they get enough evidence, and they finally go to the judge, and they say, we want a search warrant for this house. The judge says, where is it? Says, it's 132 Main Street. So the judge looks at the evidence and says, okay, he signs a warrant. They hand it to the secretary, she types it out, inadvertently types 231 instead of 132. Police go to the house, they don't look, they don't notice it, they go to the house, they go to 132 Main Street, they go ahead and they say, we have a search warrant, they go in, they find all the evidence, they arrest the guys, and then at some point the lawyer looks at the search warrant and goes, damn, you guys don't even have a warrant for my house. You don't even have a search warrant for my house. You have the next house down, 8 houses over. You don't even have a search. You have it for 231. This is 132. This is what basically the court case was. The judge said, we're going to make an exception. Yes, you do need a search warrant, but the police officers were acting in good faith. They thought they had a legitimate warrant. It was just a typo, and so evidence is admissible that you can present it in a court of law if the search warrant appeared to be valid to the police. Now, not if they're charged, if they really want to search that house and they fake it to try and get into that house even though they don't have any evidence. As long as it appears that the police are acting in good faith, that all that happened was that there was basically a typo, right? They can still use the evidence that they gained, even though technically they did not have a search warrant for that house.
Because they had the signed paper of the judge signing off.
And that everybody was acting in good faith. Everybody was going ahead and doing everything right, and that really the problem was a minor typographical error, and it was nobody was doing anything underhanded. Okay?
Yeah.
So, in a case like that, who's benefiting? Is the emphasis on the rights of the accused or convicting the guilty? Yeah, now we're into the convicting the guilty phase. The last case was a case called Nix versus Williams. And this is where the courts talk about this notion of inevitable discovery. Now, this is kind of a disgusting case, but it is a case nonetheless. In this case, Mr. Nix goes ahead and Mr. Nix killed this young woman during wintertime. I'll explain why that matters. Kills this young woman during wintertime. The police go, they find him, they throw him in the police car, and he immediately confesses to going ahead and killing her before they read him his rights. And he tells them where the body is. Now that's important because it's covered up with snow at that point, and so there was no way to find it. So they had search warrants looking around, and they wouldn't, people searching for the body, they wouldn't have found it because it was all covered with snow. Once he said, this is where I buried the body, they went straight there and they recovered the body. Afterwards, when his case went to court, his lawyer said, he was never read his rights, and he confessed before he was read his rights. Nothing he said should be admissible in the court of law. And the young lady's body, nothing that they get off the body should be admissible either, because he told them where the body was before he was read his rights. What the court said is that her body, his confession, they couldn't use. Because
wasn't it inevitable discovery or something? The reason why they found the body?
Well, it just says that
Oh, it does. Wow.
You're good, bro.
her body would have been, come springtime, during springtime, her body would have been discovered. Eventually her body would have been discovered. And so they said they can use evidence off her body to go ahead and convict him, but they couldn't use his confession. Inevitable discovery. If the evidence is admissible if it would have been discovered eventually. And the judge said this body would have been. It was just covered by snow temporarily. Again, who does this help? Convicting the guilty. So we had to shift from sort of an emphasis on protecting the rights of the accused to, during the Burger Court, sort of an emphasis on protecting, on convicting guilty people and making sure that law enforcement had the tools they needed to get the job done. Civil liberties are always being negotiated. This is always something under negotiation. And the referee, the courts. The courts are frequently the referees deciding where those rights stop and start and when the government can and cannot limit our liberties, okay? So that's the end of that lecture, and then we'll come back and we'll do civil rights.